Okay guys, so I've explained to you a different way to coming up with a question, and this is because lots of kids come up with ideas but they don't really narrow it down enough in order to be able to start formulating it into a question, and therefore it becomes a little bit difficult for them. So what I've shown you is a way of dividing it up into 3 different steps. The first one is the step that says what I like, and this comes up with do you like people or do you like things? If you like people, you kind of like how they interact or why they interact with others, or if you like things, it's how you build them or how they're useful or why they should exist. All right, so the first line that you would go down is either people or things, and you choose one of them. In the example that I've given you, it's choosing people. And so you would work out why people do what they do, how people do what they do, or how people function. One of those 3 questions is pretty much everything that people do or are. From there, you work out if you mean do they do things. So in the example that I've given you, it's are they how they do it socially, how they do it mentally, or how they do it physically. Lots of you guys thought that mentally they wanted to find out information about them. You wanted to find out mental ability, mental stability, or mental illness. So then you've taken that mental illness and gone, do you mean a definition of it, a diagnosis of it, or a symptom of it? And so you've chosen symptoms. From there, we've taken that as a topic. So what you've chosen is mental illness symptoms. All right. So we've taken that and come up with the topic. This is the center bit of this picture. So what you've decided is to look at mental illness in people. But that is really, really, really broad still. That's not anywhere near specific enough to start. So through this, what you need to decide is who you're talking about, when you're talking about them, where they live or where they're from, and what it is that you're actually focusing on. So the easiest one to work out from there was the what. And in this case, we came up with 5 different mental illnesses that people may suffer from. So depression, OCD, anxiety, PTSD, and bipolar, and you've chosen bipolar. From there, we decided on who. Who are you actually talking about? Are you talking about children or adults? If you're talking about children, are you talking about people under the age of 18? Are you talking about people 0 to 5? Who are you actually talking about? So we did 0 to 5, over 18, over 50s, 18 to 25-year-olds, or teenagers. And teenagers are somewhere between the ages of 13 and 18. All right. So in this case, you chose teenagers. When are you talking about? It's really important to establish a time period that you're talking about, because otherwise it becomes, again, really, really broad. If you're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder and you're talking about somewhere between the 70s and the 80s, those are people who fought in the Vietnam War. Whereas if you're talking about someone around the early 2000s, what you're actually talking about are people who suffered through depression after a huge drought in Australia. So you need to be really clear about what time period you're talking about. So what we looked at is if you're talking about a specific time of age group, or if it's after a specific event or between some dates. So we looked at after wars in the 19th century, between 1932 and 1945, and between 2000 and 2018. So you've chosen 2000 to 2018. The next one we looked at was where. Where are these people living? Are they living in Australia? Are they living in South Australia, in particular regions within South Australia, or in cities or countries? So what you need to look at is choose one of them. In this case, you've chosen Australia and South Australia. So what you've come up with is bipolar disorder in teenagers between 2000 and 2018 living in South Australia. That's actually that's the broad topic that you've come up with. Now we need to turn that topic into a question. So we put it up into the top of the graphic organiser, where you have bipolar disorder in teenagers in South Australia between 2000 and 2018. Now you need to decide what you want to really look at. Do you want to look at if it's increased or decreased? And in this case, you think that it's increased, so that's the one that you want to look at. Do you want to look at people who are living in urban or rural South Australia? or both areas, and in this case you've chosen rural because that's where you live. The next one you've decided 2010 to 2015, 2005 to 2010, or 2007 to 2017. You've chosen 2010 to 2015 because that's more appropriate. That's the point in time that you're living, and it's likely that there's going to be research done on that time period. If you chose any later, it probably wouldn't be published by now, so it makes sense to do that one. You've then decided between males and females. So what you've looked at is who suffers from a mental disorder, and you've chosen males. And in this case, you guys chose males because it's most often males who do not get diagnosed easily, whereas females do. Therefore, while females might have more information on them, males you can actually do something about. So in the end, you have a question, which starts with a why, because then that way you can provide some sort of argument, and finishes with a question mark because that makes it a question. So your question has become, why did the rate of bipolar disorder in teenage males increase in rural South Australia between 2010 and 2015? You've gone from the really broad idea of mental illness to a very specific question which incorporates a time, a group of people, a place, a disorder, and a really clear parameter through which to work from. You might choose to do it in these 3 steps, or you might choose to do it just by doing the narrowing the topic. But if you just do narrowing the topic, you might have to do that 3 times before you get a question that's specific enough to be able to answer. So if that's the way that you want to do it, I'm quite happy for you to do that. If not, you may want to start doing it this way on a big piece of paper. Again, if you're going to put this into your proposal though, you're going to need to make it so that it can fit on the page with your proposal underneath, and therefore I would suggest you do it electronically so you can take a screenshot and change the size of the image that you put in there. Alright, please, if you've got any questions, more than happy to help you out. Make sure though that it has a why at the start and a question mark at the end, otherwise it is not a question. Alright, cheers, bye.